Hey guys, hope all is well. I have just had like the most trouble trying to make this video. Like first the audio would not work, and then I realized it was just a simple mistake that I made, and then the laptop just crashed for no reason once I was filming, and then once it finally got on, the video wasn't working. But I think I finally figured it out, so everything should be working. Um, so I hope all is well with you. I just wanted to give my input on some of the themes that we're experiencing right now, some of the energies. There's a lot going on, and it seems very clear to me exactly what's going on, although it is complex and very dynamic. So let's just get right into it. So here's the chart for today, February 7th. It's evening right now. So as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in Aquarius: Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. And also something to note is Mercury's retrograde, like I mentioned. So we have that normal dysfunction and going back to the past and stuff like that, working on issues from before. We've got a lot of delays right now. Yeah, all that typical Mercury retrograde stuff, and it's sort of confusing and maybe contradictory because a lot of stuff is happening very quickly right now. Aquarius is a very quick sign. It's all about going to the future. It's all about new things happening. It's about quantum leaps and stuff like that. Sudden shifts and realizations. And so a lot is whoa. A lot is happening really quickly right now. But at the same time, you do have Mercury retrograde. There is a Saturn influence too as well. So some things are delayed right now. Some things are taking a long time. Some things are happening very quickly. And so it's very scattered. It's very complex. And it just depends on what we're talking about. I mean, you can see that everywhere, whether it's in your personal life or the world at large. And I just wanted to give you some dates and then kind of also just explain my take on what's going on. So we have this cluster in Aquarius, as you can see here, and it's basically just there all February. But it's the most intense in the beginning of the month because you've got, as I said, 5 planets here. And it'll be the most intense from the 9th to the 11th because that's when the moon will be in Aquarius. So here you can see that on the 9th, moon enters Aquarius, and it's almost hard to tell because everything's so clustered. So I guess it's the evening or night of the 9th, depending on where you are. Could be early on the 10th, but that's the most extreme part of this month and maybe even this year because you've got 6 planets in Aquarius. So that's very rare. Yeah, and then like I said, that'll last for 2 days, February, basically the 9th through the 11th, and it concludes with the Aquarius new moon on the 11th. So I can show you the chart for that. Sorry, my mouse clicks. I should have bought a silent mouse, but I just spaced it. But here's the new moon chart. I did cover this in a previous video, but you've got the new moon at 23 degrees Aquarius. And again, I keep saying this, but 6 planets in Aquarius, very big deal. And then February, that same day as the new moon, later in the day, the moon will enter Pisces. And so then you'll only have 5 planets in Aquarius. But again, that's a super big deal on its own. There will continue to be 5 planets in Aquarius until the 18th of this month when the sun enters Pisces. And so that does shift the focus a little bit. The sun is kind of the main determinator of the focus, I guess, for each month and for each season and all that. We can experience that very literally with the seasons and stuff like that. It's very tangible. But still, even though the sun has moved on and it's into Pisces, even after the 18th, you've still got 4 planets in Aquarius, which is still definitely a stellium. Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, and Saturn. Mercury's still retrograde at this point. So still very much a focus on Aquarius. And if you just hang tight, after I go through these dates, I'll explain what this clustering in Aquarius means for us and how to deal with it. Okay, so February 18th, the sun leaves Aquarius, but again, there's still lots of planets there. The next time a planet will leave Aquarius is on the 25th when Venus enters Pisces. So again, throughout the month, one by one, the sun leaves Aquarius, then Venus leaves Aquarius. And so after the 25th, You'll just have 3 planets in Aquarius, but still there's kind of a focus there. And by then there'll be now 3 planets in Pisces, so the focus is definitely shifting to Pisces at that point. And the intensity that we're feeling, or that I'm feeling right now, and that we all feel during the beginning of the month, the intensity that's brought on by that huge clustering of planets in one area, that will just gradually dissipate as the Sun and then Venus leave Aquarius. Another thing, I mentioned the Mercury's retrograde right now. If we just go back a few days, Mercury stations direct on the 21st at about 11 degrees Aquarius. So again, that'll be a shift. Hopefully you know what Mercury retrograde means. So when Mercury is retrograde like it is right now, at the time of me making this video, you know, things are very dysfunctional. That's a very notorious transit we experience where Mercury appears to go backward. Everything's very dysfunctional. I do have to say that I like Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. It's in an air sign, so it's very fluid, and so I do think there's an ease to going backwards. And yeah, it does seem to flow a little bit easier in Aquarius than perhaps other signs like earth signs or fire signs, I think. Or, you know, and Mercury likes being in air more so than water. It can be a little bit out of place in water, maybe a little bit more dysfunctional. So as for Mercury retrogrades to go, I do like this one. I haven't personally been struggling with this a lot, although, you know, I do have to say making this video has been pretty hard. But yeah, going back, dealing with past issues, having delays, stuff like that, technical issues, maybe going back to family or old friends, old relationships, working on things that haven't been resolved yet. And then on the 21st, when Mercury stations direct, that means it'll be moving forward. But Mercury, when planets station retrograde or station direct, they don't just suddenly start going in a different direction. As Mercury stations direct, that basically means it slowly stops going backwards, or at least it appears to stop going backwards in the sky. Basically stops and is at a standstill pretty much for a couple days, and then it slowly starts moving. But if you want to be technical, the 21st is where it completely stops and then changes directions and starts going forward again. And as it goes forward, it has to backtrack and retrace its steps that it just retrograded through. And during that time, you'll basically be experiencing a lot of the same themes that you experienced during the Mercury retrograde, but there'll be a lot of closure and completion with those issues. So you'll actually be, instead of just working through them, you'll actually be like solving them and then, you know, gaining some traction so that you can move on in the future. Finally resolving those past issues. And that's kind of the whole point of the Mercury retrograde, or at least that's one aspect of it. Okay, so I've talked enough about that. So that pretty much just gives you hopefully an idea of these transits. But I did want to say that, so just in general with this huge focus in Aquarius, I'm going to go back to right now. Just in general with this huge focus in Aquarius, it's very tangible, you know, very Aquarian themed. So stuff on the internet, online, stuff having to do with groups of people or society, sudden breakthroughs, Uranian stuff, because Uranus rules Aquarius. It's also Saturnian, so it's a lot of things that are very long term that are suddenly changing. Aquarius is also the sign of, you know, the people or the underdog, and so there could be power shifts in power dynamics. You know, the underdog gaining some traction, which I think we've seen in a few different areas, which I don't want to go into, but I just want to say that a lot of this stuff on paper sounds really great, like shifts in consciousness and, you know, gaining clarity and seeing things from a holistic point of view. And you know, I think we hear things like gaining consciousness and gaining wisdom or gaining insight, and it sounds really great. Like, who could be against that? Who could be against, you know, gaining awareness and getting more consciousness? But when I hear that, what's implied is that you have to be more conscious than you ever were before, and that can be extremely difficult and even painful, where you know, you have to stretch your psyche or your mentality further than it's ever gone before. Almost like a muscle that you have to, you know, kind of break down in order to get to a point where it's stronger than it's ever been. You have to become capable of something that you just weren't capable of before. So going beyond what would normally be your limit and just pushing yourself farther. So it can be really difficult and it can be really challenging. And so although I do see Aquarian and Uranus transits and aspects as being positive, because I value those shifts in consciousness and that extra awareness and that evolution, that's extremely valuable. But I do want to highlight how it can be a difficult process. It can be disruptive, and realizing things about your situation can be very discomforting, because something that might have been okay with you, maybe in your personal life or maybe in the world, maybe it was something that you just never questioned, or something that you were comfortable with, but you gain insight and clarity and you suddenly realize that actually what you've been experiencing isn't good enough anymore, that you have grown, or that just that what you might actually be shocked at what you've been tolerating and realize that you're actually better than whatever it is. Or you might just learn something about a situation that you didn't know before, which is empowering but also discomforting, because with new information sometimes you have to make big changes. When you learn new things, it changes your perspective. That's all stuff that Aquarius and Uranus is about, is not the situation changing first, but your perception of it. So gaining information and learning new things, which completely changes the way you perceive things and interact and experience things. And then that change in yourself and in your intellect and in your perception, that's what changes your reality, and then changes your behavior, which then changes the reality around you, if that makes sense. I know that's complicated, but I just wanted to say there could be a lot of just nervous mental energy. There could be a lot of busyness. There can be a lot of maybe being in the mind too much and constantly thinking and analyzing, and there could be a lot of anxiety right now. So just do things that help you integrate. Go for a walk, or cook something, or do something with your hands, or exercise something where you can feel in your body and sort of put your mind at rest for a little bit, or just integrate these experiences, because it could be you just want to avoid mental overload, basically, and be aware and learn all this new information that's coming at you right now, but in a way that's sustainable, where you're not overloading yourself or expecting too much. And I do want to say that the most difficult part is probably approaching the new moon. So just a couple of days before the new moon, probably just the 9th, 10th, and 11th. It'll be the most intense, potentially the most difficult, but also potentially the most rewarding. And it's probably the biggest astrological event of the year. And so hopefully I didn't scare you. Just maybe take this insight, and knowledge is power. So just have it at your disposal, and just remember to take breaks and to integrate everything, and just look at everything like a movie, if that helps. Because this is an intense time, but like I said, we have the potential to grow a lot at this time. There's a lot of dark and there's a lot of light. I know that sounds vague, but there's just so much going on right now that everything's very intense. And I do think it's very necessary, and that it's going to a higher place. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. One last thing is that Uranus is in fall right now. So all the planets in Aquarius, if you use Uranus as a dispositor, meaning like since Uranus rules Aquarius, Uranus kind of rules all the planets in Aquarius in a way. They're all in Uranus's house. That basically means that Uranus is in fall, so it's like exiled. So it's not able to take care of its guests, meaning all the planets that are in Aquarius right now. So that support isn't there. However, if you use Saturn as a dispositor, like in traditional astrology, Saturn is in domicile in Aquarius, so Saturn would be able to take care of all these planets there. So basically what that means is like tradition is meeting revolution. Like it's the combination of the old and the new, and there's this battle going on, this spiritual battle. And ultimately, I do think this is mostly a positive thing. So anyway, I don't want to rant anymore. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully something I said was interesting to you, or helpful to you. And yeah, so just take care. Things will settle down after the Mercury retrograde and as planets kind of separate from Aquarius. But it's not a bad thing. It's something to be excited about. So anyway, have a good one. I'll see you later.